I'm going to go through very quickly. I know that you've already taken a look at the materials, but I want to just, in my own words, describe what it is that we're going to do over the next 5 weeks. Today, we have on the agenda basic setup for Google Apps and the Sites feature of Google Apps. In fact, the domain name configuration is one of the most complicated parts of Google Apps, even though there's not a lot complicated even with that. And that's the very first thing that we're going to touch on today. And then I'm going to introduce you to Sites, which is a fascinating, slightly eccentric, and remarkably powerful web platform design engine that you get inside of Google Apps. In weeks 2, 3, and 4, we're going to touch on the elements that you find inside of Google Docs, spreadsheets, drawings, documents, and presentations, along with Gmail and Calendar. Many of you will already have some familiarity with the individual versions of these pieces of software. And the Google Apps versions are, I personally have been using Gmail for years and years before I began using Google Apps. These versions, the Google Apps versions of these pieces of software, are not that much different, but they do have some collaboration elements. And as we went through the specific points that we decided to cover here, we did it towards an orientation towards, not teaching you how to compose mail. We hope you already know how to press the compose mail button, type something, and send it. But rather, we're going to focus on obscure and powerful and other features that you might not have known about with these pieces of software, along with the core Google Apps functionality that running this software inside of Google Apps gets you. And finally, in the 5th week, we're going to talk about Google Apps Premiere. In the first 4 weeks, the edition of Google Apps we're going to use is the Standard Edition, and that's the free for 50 users, available to everyone. If you are using Google Apps in a business context, then Premiere is something that you're going to want to think very seriously about, because it has a number of features that you get when you pay for at a cost of $50 per user per year that are just really, really crucial in a business. Like, for example, there's an uptime guarantee and a few other little modules that you don't get, which are pretty exciting. So we're going to spend an entire class session on Google Apps Premiere. As far as today's session goes, the next an hour and 40 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the scenario that we're going to be dealing with, and show you the difference between Google Apps and some of the alternative software platforms. Talk about the blogs, show you how to configure Google Apps to your domain, show you how to add a user, and then get you running with a Google site. So the scenario that I'm not going to develop too terribly much, but I want for you, I've sort of used this scenario as a way to organize my ideas about what's important inside of Google Apps, is how would we use Google Apps if we collectively were a coffee enthusiast club or business even. If we say we want to call ourselves the Coffee Kooks, and we all enjoy drinking coffee and tasting it and reviewing it and talking about it and buying it and having events around it and all those other things. And in your own experience, you may be using Google Apps inside the context of an interest group where you want to coordinate your materials, or inside of a small or even very large business. That obviously is going to be different from this, but this Coffee Kooks is the sort of basic scenario that I want to think about. And as we go ahead, as I told you a moment ago, I'd really like to get a lot of you in the audience actually plugged into the Coffee Kooks Google Apps installation and playing around with some of the media assets and other pieces of other software elements that we deal with inside of Google Apps. So that was the end of the first of my 7 little sub-presentations, and I can proceed on to the next step, or I can take any sort of setup and configuration questions.
Michael, the one thing that I wanted to jump in from the chat room was a question. One of these things that are somewhat obvious for those of us who are working on the preparation, but sometimes aren't, is the URL for Google Docs. You need a Google account and go to docs.google.com.
Yeah, that's correct. URLs are a big deal, and we're going to talk about it in just a moment. But certainly, if you want to play with Google Docs just by itself outside of the context of a Google Apps installation, and these distinctions we'll get into, definitely just head over to google.com, create a Google account for yourself if you don't already have one, and then type in docs.google.com, and you'll have access to actually generally more features than are usually rolled out inside of Google Apps. So that's one on-ramp into the Docs world. The ramp that we're going to get on in a moment is how do you configure it so that instead of going to Google's website, you would go to docs.coffeekooks.com, your own branded URL to use this software. And that's what we're going to deal with in a moment. All right. So shall I continue?
I have one more question from the chat room, Michael.
No.
Do you already
Please go
have to
ahead.
do you already have to have an email with your own domain before getting it over to Gmail, or can you have a personalized Gmail account without having another email first?
Without having a domain that you've already purchased. Basically, and I'm going to get very specific about this in a couple of minutes, you can show up with your own domain. And I'll actually have my own domain that I bought through GoDaddy, and I'm going to show you how I configured that domain to a installation of Google Apps. Or you can use Google Apps to purchase a domain if you don't already have one.